Hey Heather, welcome home. I know that since you didn't get enough sleep last night, and you are working a full shift tonight, that you may not get to this video tonight, and I totally understand that. I'm just thinking, like I said last night, strike while the iron is hot. And once you gave me um, Kody's coordinates for his birth and his death, I could not resist going over to my laptop and firing up Solar Fire and generating the charts. And I've been looking at them, kind of like last night. I guess what I wanted to start out saying is I still would like to get together when we can, as soon as possible. And I will go over Chiron and the nodes in your natal chart, and anything else that comes up that we want to talk about your chart. Um, I still want to do that. So I'm just focusing here on Kody, Kody's death, and what was going on in the sky at the time of his death, and how that impacted your chart. So, I have three charts. It only looks like one, but I have three of them here. And we'll just kind of, like last night, intuitively go through them. And I'll try to cover as much as I can. I guess we started around 6:41 here, so I'll try to keep that in mind, so I don't keep you up all night long if you happen to watch this tonight. So first up is Kody's natal chart. June 8th, 1999, 1:01 p.m. I hope I got that right. Alameda, California. So I typically, in a formal reading, I would start out. I didn't do this last night. I was in kind of some weird zone last night and just decided to go with it. So I'm in a different weird zone tonight. Normally I would take a look at the three luminaries, the archetypal astrology that I learned originally before I got into evolutionary astrology. Archetypal astrology, like I said, has a kind of a hierarchy of what is the most important, what has the most archetypal significance. And I would start there, and then kind of, as the reading goes on, bring in more tangential things as they come up. Things that are not the major aspects, or maybe talk about some of the other, what do they call those? Blanking on things again. God, asteroids besides Chiron, and other small things that a lot of astrologers would cover right out of the gate if it looks, if it jumps out at them or it looks sexy enough to them. So I'm going to try to go according to how I was trained originally. So for Kody, Sun is in Gemini at midheaven. Moon is in Aries in the 7th house. The rising sign is Virgo. There are no planets within 15 degrees of sun, moon, or rising. So we have to go with the sign that they're in to determine the major archetypal influence. So in Kody's case, it's it's not like this for everyone. Like I have like a whole bunch of ruling planets because I have stelliums around, gathered around or bunched around my luminaries, and the same for you. So we have more. Our rulerships are spread out. They're not as focused. With Kody, they are very focused, more simplified. And I think in some ways that's really, if you look at this from, the cosmic perspective that we've been talking about, that mystical perspective, the karmic perspective, it says that when he came in with a shorter list of things that he was working on in this lifetime, a more focused list. So we'll start with the Sun in Gemini, the communicator archetype, goes with the third house and Mercury, which is also right there in the 10th house for him. Gemini is the intellect, the mind, the brain, a person's intellectual capacity. And the fact that he has it in together with the Sun at midheaven tells me that he was very bright. That he and there's no, as I look at it, it's not, the Sun is not. Well, I take that back. The Sun is in a trine aspect, 120 degrees, with Uranus down there in the 5th house. It's also opposing Pluto, which is significant. Let me see. How can that be? Oh yeah, 9 degrees, because I use that 15-degree orb. Opposing Pluto in the 3rd house, and trining. Is that right? 17. Yeah, trining Mars in the 2nd house. That's interesting. He and I both have a 2nd house Mars. And I think that also means that Mars is his rising planet. And Mars also, we'll get to this, but Mars also is a ruling planet. It's a double ruling planet for him because it's closest to the rising sign, and also Moon is in Aries, which goes with Mars. So anyway, the Sun has 2 trined aspects with major planets, Mars and Uranus. Trines are easy flow externally. The opposition with Pluto is an external challenge. So I'll try to break that down. Uranus goes with the idealist archetype, Mars with the warrior. Uranus is in its own sign of Aquarius, so a very strong Uranian influence, especially because sitting right next to it is the south node in Uranus. And also, for good measure, Neptune is in Uranus. So he's got this really strong idealist capacity, which is an ability to see the big picture. And also, on the challenging side of it, a feeling that he doesn't quite fit in, that his way might be considered eccentric or just different compared to other people. We all know idealist type people, and they're usually, especially somebody like him who is a Gemini in a very prominent position. We know people who are brilliant, who have this capacity to see, to take in, and to tie together all the seemingly disparate pieces of data that represent chaos to most of us. To him, it all fits together. And he has this very quick way of processing data and organizing it into a cohesive whole. And this allows him to be very inventive and to think outside of the box. This puts him ahead of 98% of humanity and could be seen as threatening to other people. So I'll just put that out there. For him, because this is in a trine with the sun, this is something that comes to him very easily. And he's probably, I'm talking about him in the present tense because I feel his presence. So I'm sorry if that's insensitive. I don't mean it that way. I feel like he is comfortable being an outlier. That is his zone, and he owns it. He embraces it. He's okay with it. He's okay operating on the margins where he still has a clear view, just like that Fool card we were talking about. A clear view of the 360-degree point of view, panorama, that is our world. I feel like I would have really enjoyed talking to him about, QAnon and, all of the rabbit hole kinds of things that I know now and that I'm watching unfold in the world, even as we speak. I feel like he would have, or he would not only grok it, but he would have some really valuable insights to offer. The trine with Mars down there in the second house, the second house is the nest, the home, and it's the place where he died. Where the bullet came in through the window right there by the front door. An act of warfare, violence. And I feel like he, his life, that part of him who was involved with, I'll just call it outlaw culture. Again, to him, it wasn't difficult. It was something that he had a natural aptitude for. He was naturally acclimated. And I can really relate to that too. I have second house Mars, and after being an athlete for a good period of time, it was natural to then become a part of the biker culture in Fresno, and then again in Southern California, Orange County. I used to I used to think of them. These are my people at those raging house parties I would have at my first apartment, and the cops would show up. And they'd be shining their flashlights in the window, and they'd be writing down all the prison tattoos, you know. And my next door neighbors would hide me over there until the cops cleared out. And I felt it was like breathing. It was my world, and I felt so safe with those people and so at home. So I'm getting that same vibe off of Kody. You can be the most gentle, um, pure soul, and your chart can still describe somebody who doesn't have a judgment against the parts of society that most people reject, if that makes sense. I know it makes sense to you because I'm preaching to the choir here. You're no different. And I can see why you were so close to him, because you guys share these two trying aspects. They resonate between the two of you, and you guys see yourselves as fellow travelers. So the Gemini part, back to the rulership, is a really fast energy. So he thinks really quickly on his feet, makes decision. He's very decisive, goes with it. He can anticipate where he can anticipate several moves ahead on the game board, especially with that trying to the Uranian or the Aquarian Uranus, conjunct South Node Uranus, conjunct Neptune Uranus. He sees the game board, he senses it, he feels it. It's actually a part of his being, and he can anticipate where people are going in their communications, and he's formulated an answer or a move long before other people can get that expression out of them. He also has an ability to calculate a lot of data, a lot of information that other people would find confusing and chaotic. He's able to tie it all together. He's able to organize it, to toss out what he doesn't need, and to retain what upholds the model that he's working with. I'm just getting this feeling of a person who is in command of his thoughts and his environment. Then, of course, the moon in Aries in the 7th house. 7th house of committed relationship. In the chart, one of the other charts, I think it was the one where I put his the moment of death as the outer ring on your natal chart. I had an insight over there that the 7th house is not just about marriage or primary relationship, primary committed relationship. It's also about the closest relationships we have in family and business, and in friendships. People who have really close friends who they keep for years and years and years and years and years, that would go in the 7th house. And so I was looking at his Mars, his moon in Aries. Moon is literally the mother. It's you. He has you in his 7th house. So you're that important to him. How should I put it? Normally, the place of the mother is down there on the 4th house cusp at the bottom of the chart. The very bottom. The 3rd house moving into the 4th. But in your relationship, you're not only his mother, but you're in some ways the most important relation that he had. You're the signpost. But the fact that he has Mars, that the moon is in Mars, introduces this energy of doingness, of action. It's not, I mean, it's fire, and it's, the shadow side of it is anger, impetuosity. It can lead to actions and words that lead to, that create strife and separation, even if it's only temporary. It can lead to, regrettable things, especially, during those teenage rebellion years. So there could be, with that signature that he has, moon in Aries in the 7th house, there could be a combination of him wanting to protect his mom, wanting to, be almost like a bodyguard for her, to look out for her. He would have a very strong protective instinct for you. But he could also be kind of stubborn when he makes up his mind to do something. And I know I'm cheating a little bit because I think you've alluded to that in some of our early conversations when you would be talking about him. And there would be, I think you told me there's kind of an understanding that you had with him, that he was making his own choices, that he had a mind of his own, and that you met in an emotional space that belonged to the two of you, but he also had other spaces in his life that belonged to him, just like you have other spaces that belong to you. So I'm getting this intuitively, I'm getting this strong sort of bubble, or kind of like a Pisces vesica. That when two circles are drawn and they're overlapped, and that space where they're overlapped, looks like that. You guys had a very special Pisces vesica overlap. But you also had very distinct lives separate from each other. And I think a lot of the tragedy and the sorrow and the self-judgment that you have for yourself around not bringing Kody to you is the part of you that shared that space with him. Like, you wanted that to be, and I'm, this is all emotional. I don't mean you've got it all figured out in your head. I'm talking about emotionally. there's this desire to have that Pisces Vesica that you shared with him be the dominant deciding factor in his life, so that you could in some way protect him, keep your arm around him, keep your eye on him. But that part of him that has to do things his own way, and has to make his own choices, has to make his own mistakes, has to fight his own battles, that's outside of the space that you shared together. It's in an area of his life that he wasn't overlapping with you. And my hope and prayer is that you do get to the place where you can really accept that there's 2/3, 3/4 of his life that wasn't overlapping in this place, and that you can't hold yourself responsible for what happened out there. That's what shows up here for me. His moon is in a grand trine, which is a very, very powerful configuration. And it's not just a grand trine, but it's known as a grand trine with a kite formation. If you look down there in the 3rd house, Pluto, the bottom planet in the chart, next to Chiron there. Pluto, there's a red line bisecting the chart going up to the sun. That's the kite. Then there's blue lines, one going up to Venus in the 11th house, the other one going to the moon in the 7th house, and then there's another blue line going from the moon in the 7th to Venus in the 11th. So that's the grand trine. 3 trine angles. Venus is at 2 degrees Leo. Moon is at 8 degrees Aries, and Pluto is at 8 degrees Sag. I feel like I could talk about this for the next hour and a half, and I don't want to do that to you. I don't want to keep you up all night. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest, and maybe we can talk about it more when we get together for dinner or coffee or whatever. I think out of all the readings I've done in my life, hundreds and hundreds of them, maybe 15%, I'm guessing, have a grand trine, and out of those 15%, maybe 5%, or maybe a third of them, put it that way, have a bisecting line to make it a kite formation. The kite formation grounds the grand trine. If you don't have that kite, the grand trine leads to a lot of wild behavior for most people because it's not grounded. And it leads to this very powerful force being unleashed in that person, but they're like a ship in a stormy sea that loses its rudder. Well, he has a rudder. And that rudder being Pluto opposite Sun, Gemini opposite Sagittarius. You know, Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth. We talked about it a little bit last night. That dark mother energy. I didn't go into that archetype very much, but you have it very strongly. I have it very strongly. It's the most persecuted of all the archetypes in the world, in the wounded patriarchy that we live in. So it is the witch burning at the stake. It's the powerful feminine energy that is so threatening to the patriarchy that's on its last legs. And my first thought when I got to looking at this is that, you know, Kody died young. He died prematurely. And in some way, the life he was living on the outskirts, on the periphery, it's that raw zone of society where people die. Or people, if they don't die, you know, like I used to talk about it all the time, but a lot of the guys that I grew up with in Fresno are either dead or in prison. They're thrown in a hole. My friend Randy Hall killed a cop with a metal pipe, and he is in a dark place, man. And I wanted to go visit him, and my sister was like, "Don't even bother. It's not Randy anymore." And it's that kind of like an outlaw vibe. And it's very dark mother. You know, we also talked last night in terms of the 8th house, that there's this rawness there. It's a choice, you know, a person who carries the dark mother energy, especially earlier in life when we're trying to figure things out and we don't know anything about the archetypes, we don't know anything. All we have is our early life religious conditioning or cultural conditioning, and we're reacting. You know, we're just making choices because we're going toward pleasure and away from pain, and we have it's like we have blinders on, and we're just operating according to our karmic imprint that's dictating everything. You know, our needs and desires are dictated largely through responding to external stimuli. And if you have the dark mother, you know, a prominent Pluto, a prominent Scorpio, prominent 8th house, if you carry that in your being, then you're very at home in the dark side, you know, the unconscious, as Carl Jung would say it, the collective unconscious. Well, that's pathologized in our world, and they call it depression, or they call it crime, they call it deviancy, and they either punish it or medicate it. And if they don't do it, we do it to ourselves because of the shame dynamic, because of that early life conditioning. It's a very, very wounded archetype in this culture until we figure it out. We figure out this culture and how out of balance it is, how it rejects the feminine, it rejects the shadow side of life. There are no rituals here for us to navigate the dark side of life in an empowered way like traditional societies do. Young woman gets her period in a traditional tribal environment. All the women are cycling with the moon. They take 3 days and go off into the forest, and they sit on mossy rocks and let it flow. That's an example of a culture that recognizes the importance of the shadow and facilitates its flow. So there's this like natural sine wave through life, and they're not resisting it, they're not pathologizing it, they're not throwing people in prison because of it. And so when I see Pluto in a really kind of a linchpin position in Kody's chart down there, third house on the cusp of the fourth, 7 degrees from the fourth. So I would if I was doing this chart by hand, I would draw Pluto right on that line, moving into the fourth house, the cusp. When I see that, and I think about the probability that Kody probably didn't have access to a lot of the perspective that we're talking about right now. Who does? Nobody. It's very rare. Even in psychological circles, in spiritual circles, it's very rare to see it for what it really is, and to see how the culture that we live in represses that energy. And so my guess is that Kody was leaning on that kind of dark, it's seductive is the word. It's the dark mother, man. She's beautiful. She's beautiful in this primal way. Not pornography, not you cannot exploit her. Fuck no. She'll destroy your ass. She is not to be messed with. But if we don't have a roadmap, if we don't have a guidebook on how to coexist with her and to work with her, to flow with her, to harness her, to be in alignment with her. If we don't have that, then we're doing that thing I was talking about, where we're reacting and we're adjusting and we're just instinctively feeling our way along with her. And in that circumstance, it's dangerous. There is danger. And that danger is reflected in the potential for exactly what happened to him. Does that make sense? I hope that came together there. It created an environment where something extreme could happen because it's death and rebirth. Pluto. But at the same time, that very energy that ended up taking his life, and that's going to show up in another chart here, in the death chart, that very energy was also a grounding anchor in his life, like a homing beacon that made this easy flow between Pluto, Moon, his literal mother, Venus, the lover part of him, and also the healer part of him, back down to Pluto. So, okay. So now I'm going to go over here because that's a good segue to the rising sign Virgo. Virgo is the wounded healer. In the archetypal system I learned, it's called it's the other mother one. Nourishing mother, dark mother. God. I stubbed my toe right there. It's the Virgo is the soul mother. Soul mother. So his rising sign is literally the principle of health and healing. And ideally, it's the trust and knowledge that our being knows what's best for us. And the rising sign, the ascendant, is like our persona. It's like a shield that we hold up to the world so that it's the first thing that the world sees, and we hide the rest of us behind it. So he's presenting to this world somebody, and this I'm guessing, okay, I never met him, unfortunately. Would have loved to. But anybody coming into contact with him who doesn't know him would likely get a feeling off of him that all is well, that things are under control, that things are organized, that it's okay. That would have been his message that he is conveying to people, that they would see first and foremost, that would be their first impression of him. That's what he wanted people, and not, maybe not consciously, but his being wanted people to see somebody who is together, who shows up on time. Or, the shadow side is never shows up on time, is always late. But ideally, it's showing a competence and an organizational principle that expresses the notion of competence and wholeness, okayness. It's nature. I always get an image of a beautiful cabin in the forest, like the Oregon rainforest, with moss everywhere and a creek nearby that you can hear and a clear air. A baby doe out in the front nibbling on some plants, birds swooping down, maybe an owl. It's this image of peace, an absence of stress. And so that's this persona that I'm getting for him. And it would actually be very attractive to people who want that in their own life. He's an attractive person that way anyway. Where the Uranian, Aquarian part of him that doesn't fit in is accompanied by this dark mother, soul mother type that is very appealing. So in a weird way, he's like who's a good example? Steve McQueen. In the movies that he used to be in, he was always the rebel who people fell in love with and were attracted to. It's both at the same time. He's got a lot of that going on. A lot of that. Okay, so I've already gone 45 minutes. 40 minutes. Let's look at some other charts. I'm sorry. I really got involved there, and I feel like I'm meeting Kody in a new way, and I'm so grateful to you that you are letting me do this. I'm getting a little choked up, you know. Now I really want to meet him. Okay, so this is Kody Johnston's murder. The official time of death, I went with that one, 9:57. He mentioned that he was shot around 9:01 and that he died somewhere in there. I don't think that's going to make a huge difference in the chart, those, less than an hour. In fact, I know it won't. It might make the moon move like a degree one way or the other. Well, a degree forward. So, interestingly, at the moment of death, he had the same exact house cusps as he did when he was born. Virgo rising, Gemini at midheaven. Everything's in the same place that way. Not the planets, but the signs that are on the house cusps. I find that to be really fascinating. It's like the gateway that he came in on was the same gate that he went out on, and there's an eloquence there. There's actually a beauty to that. It makes me realize that this world we live in is a divine creation, and it is happening in the mind of God. And God gives us clues like this to remind us that the divine timing is like the most perfect Swiss clock we could imagine. So in an event chart like this, we look to initially anyway, we look to the fast moving planets. I'm sorry. We look to the fast moving inner planets. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. We especially look at Mars because Mars is the activator for a new cycle and for events. It's the trigger, like on a gun. Sorry, but I mean, that's what it is. I don't mean to be insensitive, but it's an apt comparison. So Mars at the moment of his death was exactly opposite Pluto at the moment of his death. Within 1 degree, less than a degree. And in fact, if we used 9:01 as the actual death, it would be even closer to exact. So to me, that alignment, Mars opposite Pluto, the planet of death, they're in the 5th house, which is your, you got 6 planets in your 5th. How many does he? Let me see. He's got Uranus, South Node, and Neptune in the 5th, so very significant stellium for him. Mars is in the sign of Leo, which goes with the 5th house. Pluto's in the sign of Aquarius, which goes with the 11th house, where Mars is. So there's this reciprocity between Leo and its polar opposite, Aquarius. The golden child, your golden child, is represented there in Leo in the 5th house. Pluto opposite Mars. Before Pluto was discovered, Mars went with Scorpio. Mars was both the warrior and the dark mother. So you've got this huge dark mother convergence on this golden child idealist polarity. And so I'm getting this really strong impression that the timing of Kody's birth and death are coordinated. There's a real strong, and I don't know what you've heard from other readers, but I get a really strong impression of predestination here. It was written in the book already. And I know you feel like, God, if I just would have taken time, you said you would have lived in your truck. Of course you would. You would have done anything. You would have given your own life gladly if it meant he could keep living. Okay, so I'm not taking that away from you. That can't be taken away from you. It's appropriate. He was your partner in that, or is your partner in that Pisces Vesica. It's a very special relationship beyond mother and son. It's a karmically aligned contract. Very significant. But his birth and his death are plotted out on a timeline that had a very definite ending. This is very definitive. And there's this interesting, to me, quality of childlike innocence involved with it. Here we've got these two really, really intimidating transpersonal energies, the Dark Mother and the Idealist, together with the Golden Child, which is innocent and adventurous, light-hearted, fun-loving, not taking anything personally. I'm kind of describing you, but this was the dominant energetic quality of the moment. God, I hope this sounds okay. I feel like he was ready in his own way, and he knew in his higher self, he knew the score. He knew intuitively how the book ended for him. And he had has this childlike acceptance of what is, because he knows it doesn't end. It leads on to the next adventure. So I'm getting this really strong, light-hearted heart expression of okayness. He's not bogged down in lamenting or sadness or stuckness. He's not mired in, the deep water of Scorpio. He's not in the quicksand. No, he's on the beach romping around. He's throwing a frisbee with his friends. It's not a it's not the it's not the horrifying thing that people project onto it for him. I just get from this chart this it's a decisive chart. And I could go on and on. I mean, I'm not looking. I don't have time to go over every single thing that was going on. We'll cover some more when we lay this chart over your chart. But I just wanted to point that out in the death chart itself, that there is it's a gateway that is the same as when he came in. The house system is arranged exactly the way it was when he was born. The same house cusps. And the 5th house, 11th house, Mars opposite Pluto, that's the death trigger. That's the trigger pulled on the gun. Combined with Aquarius and Leo, the idealist, that part of him who could see the big picture, who understood all too well the grand scheme of things and his place in it, combined with this innocent child. Chills. So that same chart that we were just looking at is now the outer wheel on this chart, and it's laid on top of your natal chart, so that now the house system is your natal chart. Gemini rising, Aquarius at midheaven, so it's interesting to me. You have Moon in the 7th house in your natal chart. Kody has Moon in the 7th house in the natal chart. The time of his death, Moon and Sun in the 7th house. That means that beautiful Pisces Vesica that you shared with him, that space that was yours alone, that was predetermined and contracted before you guys took birth, it means that it was present at the moment of his death. That's why I feel that's why this lingering sense continues to affect you, that you could have done something and you should have done something and you should have followed your intuition. There was more that you could have done. Well, that, like I said before, that's appropriate and that's natural. But beyond that, it's a function of this special relationship you had with him, and the fact that those archetypal dynamics were so pronounced at the moment of his death. A few hours later, and it wouldn't have, those planets would have moved out of that, especially Moon. The Moon would have been in the 8th house, 3 hours later, 2 hours later, probably. But at that moment, it was in the seventh house, conjunct Sun. They're both in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is the elder leader archetype. And, in traditional astrology, it's structure. The structure of the world. It's the laws. It's the agreements that bind humanity. It's the solidity of life. It's also, because it goes with Saturn, it's a wrecking ball of truth. It's just the self-evident truth. To have two of the three luminaries in the sign that goes with self-evident truth, brutal honesty, converging on the seventh house that you shared with your boy. It's that blatant statement of what is. It can't be changed. It can't be rationalized away. It can't be, no matter how much you think about it, you cannot change the story. You can't go back and rewrite the script. And I feel like the lesson that they're telling us here, telling you, that they're holding out to you, is that this is the way it was meant to be. This moment in time was meant to be. And I know that's hard to hear. Now we're talking about the trigger, Mars being the trigger in an event chart. And that in this event, Mars is opposing Pluto. For you, that opposition is between the second and the eighth house. Mars is on your Jupiter within 3 degrees, or about 3 degrees, in Leo. So where we were talking about, second house is the nest, the home, literally the home, where I belong, the place you belong, and how you decorate it and arrange it so that it is your place, it is your home, it is where you belong. The place of belonging. The quality of the place of your belonging is a combination of the golden child, that childlike innocence and lightheartedness and heart expression that's very attractive in a safe kind of way, very appealing. It's combined with Jupiter, the teacher traveler, the adventurer. So you're like in the home especially, you're like if you could combine, how should I put this? It's the adventurer who never lost her childlike ways, who still approaches things in a very spontaneous, eager, excited way, who wants to learn and who wants to share what she learns. So the trigger that ended up taking Kody's life happened to be right on top of that part of you. So if your life, being a moon in Sagittarius, teacher traveler part, teacher traveler type, if your life represents this partaking of life, this seeking out of experience so that you can broaden your horizons, that's a huge motivator for your life. And you bring that into the home where you make it safe, you make it fun, you make it appealing, attractive. It's almost unfair to have this thing happen at that moment, that lines up with that part of your being. But immediately it tells me that as tragic and as unthinkable a thing as this was to have happen in your life, it's also, it almost sounds sacrilegious to say this, but it represents an experience that goes with a lot of the other, well, it transcends, is bigger than, but it still goes with some of the other more epic, legendary, larger than life adventures and experiences you've given yourself in this life. Not just Burning Man, but I mean, my impression is that your life kind of had this spontaneous involvement with a lot of really intense, archetypally potent experiences that a lot of people will never ever taste of in their whole entire life, and you've had a ton of them. And somehow Kody's death, the way that it impacts your natal chart, it's screaming out that this is another, it's almost like it's upping the ante. Everything that you've experienced, everything that you've learned, all of the wisdom that is accrued through all of your experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, this is challenging all of that. And it's almost like the universe or God knows your capacity, knows what you're capable of, refuses to give you more than you can handle, but is definitely pushing the envelope and giving you something that, let's face it, there's a sizable chunk of humanity that definitely could not handle it, definitely could not get past this. And I feel like you were given this tragedy because it's the one thing that if you and when you navigate all the aspects of it and come out on the other side, which you will understand why it happened. You may not be happy that it happened. You may not agree with it even, but you'll understand it. You're going to take a look and you're going to go, oh, it put me in this place at this time for this reason, I see that now. And I wouldn't have been prepared otherwise. That's why Mars opposite Pluto converged on your Jupiter right there in the second house. It's introducing a transformation in you that you did not want. You would have rejected with every fiber of your being if you had a choice. But there's old moon and sun up there, the plain truth. Couldn't have been any other way. It's a hard pill to swallow. It couldn't have been any other way. So I feel like if we're talking about the impact of Kody's death on your life, without even looking at all the other things that are going on, and there's a ton of them, I'll probably be, we'll have more to talk about when we sit down and we'll have time. But the main takeaway that I'm getting from this is that there is a sense of predestination and finality to what happened that is actually necessary for both of you. The symmetry between Kody's birth chart and his death chart is almost astounding. He was meant to come in through that gate. He was meant to go out through that gate at that time. And that experience was meant to perform a work of alchemy on you. I mean, it's a cheesy thing to say in a way, but you know what I mean. Transformed by fire. Literally melted and refashioned into something else. And I know that, I don't know. I could never know. But I would imagine that there's times where, the feeling is just so raw, so horrible, or so, whatever it is, even if it's dissociated, like I should be feeling more than this. Whatever it is, whatever the place is you are on that continuum of healing in the aftermath, and that's going to continue on. It might be helpful to just realize that the divine book had already been written. It's already been written for you. It's already been written for me. And this experience is really pointing that out. It's really emphasizing that. This is the reason, if we're looking for one, why those other readers are saying it doesn't matter what you would have done, this would have happened anyway. I mean, who knows? But the point of that is that whatever the intention is, look, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say this. Whatever was in God's mind that would allow this to happen, that cannot be changed. It's determined. It just is. There's nothing we can do in our limited capacity to affect that. We can do things. Say you would have followed through on a inner voice that was saying, call Kody and drop everything and drive out there, get his stuff and bring it back. In some way, God's intention would have been fulfilled no matter what. may have taken a different form, but the purpose of it was already cast in stone. I'm not saying, I didn't invent this, Heather. I'm not conjuring this up as a way to make you feel better. I'm checking in with myself. I'm honestly not, forcing this reading to say what I want it to say. I'm reporting what I'm seeing. And this reading is making it abundantly clear that moment in time was provided to both you and Kody and probably a lot of other people in a divinely timed pageant that had to be that way. And you just by going through your healing process and allowing time to do its thing, just by being yourself, this experience that you and I are sharing right now, through all of that, there is this transformation happening in you. Behind the scenes, deep inside of you. And I do predict, and I'm not big on, and this is not an astrological prediction, this is just Michael saying what's coming up for him. I do predict there will come a definitive time where you will understand to the core of your being, not just mentally or intellectually, to the core of your being, you will have that moment where you go, this is why it happened. It had to be that way. This is the experience I never would have wanted, but I see why it happened. And like I said, you may still be, you might even be angry about it when you have that realization, but ultimately it's going to heal you. Or you're going to recognize the healing that has taken place through it. All right, sweetheart. I can tell you in 35 years of doing astrology charts, I've never felt this passionate ever about a reading or how should I say it, about an investigation into the archetypes. I feel very strongly about the things that have come up here. And I'm having a lot of clarity around the element of predestination and the further element of God's love as the overarching guiding principle. Sometimes that love expresses itself through the thing that we don't want and that we don't think we can handle or that we can bear. But it's very clear to me that at the end of the day, all of this is exactly how it should be. And I just hope and pray for you that you continue to put one foot in front of the other and that you continue to trust that in doing that, the necessary changes will continue to take place. You really are being guided. You really are being directed. Divinely so. Not these motherfuckers who are messing with you, but beyond that. And that's precisely why you're such a threat, or you have been. So I would just encourage you, embrace what you're hearing here. Take it in. I love you. Let me know if you have any questions. See you soon.